Hello again, friends. Welcome to Investment Immigration Conversations. I'm your host, Carolyn Lee, principal and founder of Carolyn Lee PLLC, a U.S. investment immigration law firm dedicated to helping clients build their futures with investment immigration. And by tradition, this is December, so this is our year-end look back and EB-5 edition of Investment Immigration Conversations. And I like to have, for this edition, luminaries in the EB-5 industry to help us kind of process the year that we have had in EB-5. And I thought the perfect backdrop for the look back in 2025 is this fantastic report that Christine spearheaded. It's a 2025 report called EB-5 After the RIA, Transparency, Transformation, and Opportunity. And this study really brings together the numbers that we have to date, and uses the data set to, and our experience year 3 in EB-5 under the RIA to look ahead, really. What has the experience been, and what are our challenges? What has really worked in EB-5, and what does that say for us all in the industry for the remaining 2 years that we have left? So it's like a real kind of comprehensive look at where we are in EB-5 and the RIA right now. So what I'd love to do is kind of yield the mic to Christine at this moment and have you kind of tell us in your words what kind of was the thinking behind this report, what you think were the takeaways from the report, and what you would like us all to take away from the report today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for having me on this end of the year webinar. It's been a fantastic year. It's been a very big year, and we're really, I think, all of us getting ready for a bunch of milestones that are going to be coming our way next year. So it's a perfect time for discussion. When we first thought about what we wanted to do for a white paper within the industry, I think there's been a lot of topics that have been discussed. There's a lot of areas that we're still looking for guidance from USCIS, but we've kind of conjectured about. But it felt, having been on a lot of the meetings with IIUSA on the Hill, having been to a lot of the industry conferences, and being on the road talking to investors, we really want to kind of elevate the conversation beyond new concepts in the RIA, new things you should be aware of, just really talking about what the program has achieved in the past 3 years and what that means for advocacy, right? I think that, Lee and I talk a lot about numbers when we see each other in DC, but it's always a lot about what the program has done overall, and using those numbers to really justify the existence of the EB-5 program. But to kind of hone in on what the RIA aimed to do. This information is largely available. There's been a lot of sharing of information among a lot of regional centers since the passage of the RIA, because we're all working together to try to get this program made long-term or even better permanent. With all these new provisions, we've been talking about how the program is better than ever, but it really has. I think we really wanted to talk about how there have been material improvements to the RIA with the passage of the RIA, how much that's impacted the investors, but also how much that has impacted what Congress set out to do. For many years, you and I have talked about all the criticisms that Congress had about EB-5. It was going into these mega cities. It was going into areas that already had financing or was able to secure financing. And so when the RIA was passed, there was obviously a clear goal to try to bring rural investment into kind of second tier or not as big gateway cities who really haven't historically seen EB-5. And, all of us talk about this project and that project, but to have this group put together an analysis that really looked at that impact just based on numbers over the past 3 years. This is a tremendous amount of success in achieving the goals that Congress set out for EB-5. I know Lee will talk about that more, but we really wanted to get that story out. We don't have to wait until 2027 to have that discussion. We don't even have to talk, as successful as the pre-RIA program has been, we don't need to talk about that either. We really just need to focus on what changes they wanted with the passage of the RIA and how successful that has been. We also talked about how much that has concurrent filing as a new feature has brought about a completely different form of EB-5 investor than there has been before. As we know, EB-5 investors who are concurrently filing, they've already screened security, they've already been in the US, they have established, lives and roots here in the US. Having them convert to an EB-5, it brings into a lot less questions about background checks and national security and everything else that have been in the past, perhaps negative focuses of scrutiny for EB-5. It's also, been a game changer amidst all the policy changes happening in the current administration. And EB-5 has really become a source of permanent residency for a lot of visa categories that have not looked at EB-5 before. So that's, I think, been a very welcome addition. And really the kinds of immigrants who are now able to stay in the US because of EB-5, I think these are all kind of very welcome categories of people that are coming in now. It's a permanent, status. I think it's becoming much more aware. So we just wanted to give talking points and direct the conversation about EB-5 as we move into trying to get grandfathering advanced from November 2026 to September 30th, 2026 to 2027. As we talk about long-term reauthorization, as we talk about, the biggest ask, which is visa numbers down the road.
Christine, I just have to say, listening to you, the way that you framed it is really, really beautiful, and it's so smart because there are a lot of different ways that we can measure the program, including measuring the successes, but to look at it, to test the program in terms of what Congress wanted the program to do in enacting the RIA, I think is really, really, really smart. And I want to yield the floor in a moment to Lee, but to the point about redistributing the location of the projects and therefore the dollars, let me just really, really quickly share this graphic from your report. This is from Lee's portion of it, and I'm going to zoom out because look at how the projects have been redistributed. You have the blue marking the pre-RIA distribution across high usage EB-5 states, with New York, my beloved fair home city and yours, and California taking really more than the lion's share. And look how the usage has been redistributed post RIA.
Yeah.
So
What's really interesting, we are trying, what has already impacted kind of the strategy behind meetings with Congress that are perpetually taking place as we try to always get ready for, as soon as we got reauthorized via the RIA, meetings started happening again about, permanent reauthorization and other changes of the program. But it allows us to meet with so many more congressional offices than before. Right? You have projects taking places in states that have never seen EB-5 before. They know about these projects because these projects have other incentives built in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It allows
Spread out.
much more conversation, much more networking. It's not in some state that they know about that's seen EB-5. It's happening in their home state. So it's really allowed a lot more interesting conversations and more widespread support. In all of IIUSA's efforts and all the lobbying efforts that happen on behalf of EB-5.
That's good. That's really positive.
Yeah.
Lee, will you please kind of give us the state of play numbers wise? I mean, the program, like the conversation in EB-5 and around EB-5 has been really dominated by our analysis of and our understanding and our flawed understanding and our struggle to understand more about visa usage because it's a zero-sum game, baby. So walk us through. Tell us where we are, what the public data has shown, and what your own analysis is showing us.
Happy to. But first of all, thank you, Carolyn, for inviting me here. It's always be a great honor to be on this webinar or on a panel with you, Christine and Jay. That makes me look like I'm super smart. So thank you for the invitation. But I need to rely on some of my fancy slides to show the numbers, if that's okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, share. Let's see. I think this should be. Are you seeing my screen right now?
Yes, it's up.
Awesome. Well, to build onto what Christine just shared with us, 2025 has been a tremendous year for EB-5. It's the third year after the RIA was passed in law, and then we are seeing a lot of actual impact on the program right now. The first graph I would like to show is the number of case file, specifically 526E and 526 petitions filed by fiscal year. So for 2025 here, I want to highlight that the number only includes the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 2025, but we are already seeing more investors in the first 3 quarters this year than the entire year of 2024. So, this year has been a record-breaking year for EB-5 after the RIA, and you can see the bounce back of the program. The popularity of the program, the demand for the program has been up since the passage of RIA. The fact that we only have time to have this webinar 2 days before Christmas shows that how busy you all are. So I congratulate all of you to have so many investors and clients this year. But this is showing you the strong growth of the program after RIA. And IIUSA actually published a new economic impact studies this year to quantify the impact of the EB-5 program. So we look at the past data from 2016 to 2019. These are the high-level economic impact that EB-5 have generated to the U.S. community. 75 billion total investment amount that includes EB-5 capital and also the private investment that are leveraged by EB-5 in those projects. The program has created more than 1.7 million jobs for American community. And also this is interesting because for the first time, the economic impact study of EB-5 looked into the wage data, like how much has paid to American workers. So over 122 billion has been paid to American workers thanks to the investment generated by the EB-5 program. And on average, there's nearly 34,000 per job. I just looked it up. The annual median income for American people right now is 62,000. So that means that EB-5 not only creates jobs, but creates good paying jobs for American workers. And also I would like to highlight those key multipliers here. So those numbers are in the past, 2016, 2019. I'm sure we will hit those numbers again. But on average, the program, each investor creates 45 jobs, way more than the minimum requirement of 10 jobs per law. So the program actually generates more impact than the congressional intent. And also, as I mentioned, a lot of EB-5 projects, EB-5 only a portion in their capital stack. They also use EB-5 to leverage other private investments. So looking at 2016 and 2019, each one of the EB-5 investor, that means with 500K investment, additional 1.6 million in private investment was generated thanks to the capital stack that EB-5 has played a major role. So I would like to say that it's very successful program, not only helping a lot of investors to get their green card, but also generate a lot of jobs for the US community. And if you would like to get a copy of the full report, feel free to scan the QR code here. But here I would like to pause a little bit and see, Carolyn, if you have any questions or.
Well, the one thing that pops out to me, and I don't know if this is apples to apples, but if it's 1.6 million yield based on 500K in pre-RI investment, that's a little over a multiplier of 3. And so if now we have 800K, I wonder whether the same multiplier applies so that we have a little over 2.4 million. in domestic investment for every investor's investment. Lee, would you know whether it translates that way or roughly?
That's a great point. We kind of read your mind. We are going to do another economic impact study that's focused on post RIA. That means the investment amount is $800,000. So I will let you know later next year about the multiplier, whether it have changed.
I
But
would
guess
imagine it's only, it's just going to be higher than 1.6 in any event.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also, I think Christine and also Jay may offer some insights here because you see the projects. Now, right now with more EB-5 demands, does EB-5 still play the same role in the capital stack or EB-5? I don't know. I mean, do you guys see any change?
Yeah, Lee, you and I have talked a lot about this, is particularly with investment in rural areas where financing has traditionally been very hard to obtain. And you're talking about the definition of a rural area is very, very specific. It's a very low population area. So that Lee and I have brainstormed a lot, and we're very excited about the new economic impact study. But I would expect that the impacts will be higher just because of the regions in which that investment is taking place. You're talking about average wages, populations will be smaller. The downstream impacts you see from projects that might be absorbed in a larger city, I would expect that the impacts will be more impactful in small areas of less than 20,000 people. It's hard to believe it won't be. So I suspect that the ripple effects of EB-5 we might look at it a little bit differently than we did with the pre-RIA kind of investment where it's in larger cities. But I think that there will be very specific impacts because of the new geographies where EB-5 has been since the passage of the RIA.
I think maybe to add to that also, it's the different types of projects that there are, right? We've gone from doing hotels, office towers to now doing manufacturing facilities, storage facilities, which are in rural areas, which may possibly have a lot more longevity in them, not only to create jobs, but to maintain these jobs as well. So that's going to be a greater, more long-term impact on economic development altogether.
For sure, that's got to be the case, and I think it also addresses the point. Some of the naysayers pre-RIA were fond of saying, well, you've got a tower going up in Midtown. It would have gotten built anyway. They would have gotten financing some other way. But you place these projects in more remote areas. Well, they may not have been able to finance that project. So EB-5 has really played an impactful role in making those projects viable in those instances.
Yeah, just one more point here that I would like to add on. Christine and I again talk about this a lot. Is the income, the wages that EB-5 has generated. I mean, if you put in $75,000 a year as the wage for workers, maybe in a rural area, that's a huge impact. Yeah. Comparing to $75,000 in Manhattan, maybe there's just not be any minimum income or medium income, but because EB-5 is drawing more and more investments in rural area, in the true rural area, and also those really high unemployed area. So I think the wage has generated a lot of impact in those communities as well.
All right.
All right. Next one. Sorry, I know there's a lot of numbers here, but you all know how much I love talking about data. So this is the latest data published by USCIS in Q3 fiscal year 2025. So for the first time ever, USCIS show us how many 526 and 526 petitions has been filed by category, meaning high unemployment area, rural area, unreserved, and also by country of birth for the top markets: China, India, Taiwan, South Korea, Vietnam, and also the rest of the world. So this summarized the data that USCIS just shared with us between 2022, after the passage of RIA, to Q3 2025. This shows you how many petitions has been filed. Look at the big numbers. China still accounts for 50% of the market right now. Second biggest market is India. I don't think many people will be surprised. But But Taiwan, we are seeing a lot of demands from Taiwan. So Taiwan overtook Korea and Vietnam to become the third largest market post RIA. And then we also have Korea and Vietnam. But overall, we are seeing we have more petitions filed under high unemployment area. About 6,400 petitions has been filed versus rural right now is about 6,100. But that is only the overall numbers. We are seeing, if you look at the time trend, we are seeing rural has become super popular right now. In fact, in fiscal year 2025, rural has overtaken high unemployment in China to become the majority of the case filings right now. And I mean, the numbers are very interesting, but overall, we estimate over 13,000 petitions have been filed. That translates into EB-5 investment to be over 10 billion investment. And 96% of those investments, they are made through a regional center in the TEA category. So those are the big numbers that we're seeing. Not sure if Carolyn, you would like to expand this a little bit?
Oh, I think that the numbers and the way that you've displayed them speak for themselves, just in terms of that raw demand. One thing that, and I know you're going to parse this a little bit more in subsequent slides, the one thing that really stands out to me is the rest of world demand. It's high.
Yep.
And I think that is certainly going to continue to have knock-on effects in the unreserved categories, as well as the set-aside usage and potential trigger of the per country caps. But perhaps we can get into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Christine and Jay can offer more insights on this, on where the rest of the world investors coming from. But we are seeing like right now the market is more diversified. Like in the good old days, like China dominated the market, like it accounts for 75% and India 10%. The rest of world maybe just like 15%. But right now it's more diversified right now, especially for the rest of the world outside of these top 5 markets. So I mean, I guess you all are doing a great job promoting EB-5 across the world. So congratulations.
Yeah, I think the increased transparency of since the RIA, the grandfathering, there's more predictability because of the requirements in the RIA. I think that's certainly helped give the rest of the world markets more confidence in EB-5 as a predictable way to move forward. I think concurrent filing has been very attractive across the board, not just in China and India, and has really made EB-5 a viable way to stay in the US after, whether you're graduating university or whatever it is, or transitioning from an H-1B. I think that in general, I think that there's just a little bit more certainty, more transparency from all the stakeholders in EB-5, and that's given, I think, markets that are a little bit newer to EB-5 confidence that it's a program that can be relied upon. So
I think there's a lot more awareness about the program than there ever was in the industry. Also, I think geopolitical situations have, of course, increased demand from everywhere in the world, not just the top 4 countries or top 5 countries that typically the EB-5 industry has serviced. We're seeing a lot of traction from students in the UAE or from Singapore or from Bahrain and other countries now looking at EB-5 as an option for themselves just because of what's going on everywhere in the world, right? Not just in the US.
Totally.
Yeah, I assume also like with the increased fee for the H-1B, the new H-1B petitions, I mean, it would drive more demand for EB-5, I think.
Absolutely.
It's a more diverse program on this vector as well than it has been in prior years.
Yep.
That's positive. All right.
All
What
right.
else you got for us, Lee?
Okay, let's keep going. More numbers coming up.
Nice.
So those are the 526 and 526E case file between 2022 to 2025 Q3. So we take those case file and then I use some key assumptions here. I know we have some lawyers here in our attendees, so I put my disclaimer here. Everything is we guess. in all cap. Please refer to the title. So when we calculate visa demands, so two most important assumption has to be made. One is how many of those cases will be approved. So the approval rate of 526 and 526 years, and also how many visas per approved petitions will end up using the family size. So in this chart here, I use 95% as approval rate because we are seeing a high approval rate post RIA for the new petitions. I'm sure because seasoned lawyers like Carolyn help you to do a clean source of fund document that can help you to do 100% approvals and also projects too. But 95% approval rate is the average right now we are seeing. And also 2.5 visa per approved petitioner is what we're seeing right now. Unfortunately, we don't have any data for AOS, adjustment of status. I have heard that, Jay can tell you more about this. The family size of investors who do concurrent filing AOS are much smaller. Like they're not going to use 2.5 visas per investor. But based on the data, what that I have is 2.5 right now. So based on this assumption, we estimate for rural, all the investors would need 15,000 visas. For high employment, about 16,000 visas. Those are the overall demand that we're looking at. The good news is State Department and also USS has been using visa numbers since 2024. So if we take those visa numbers that have been used in the last 2 years out of this pool, so last year, 2024, and also through May this year, over 700 visa has been issued to rural applicants. For high unemployment, it's only 260. So if we took those demand out of the equation, and again, unfortunately, we don't have any numbers for fiscal year 2025 AOS visa usage. So there are a lot of question marks here. But overall, we are looking at about 14,000 visa demand for rural category and about 16,000 for high unemployment. But that is just theoretically speaking. This is overall demand for the visa numbers here. Not sure if you want to expand this a little bit or any thought?
No, I think this is great. I think this is great. And folks are welcome to ask any questions about this. I think the key question that those kind of coming into this conversation might be about, well, how do we get to 14,000 from 6,000? And largely it's a function of that multiplier in the second column, the 2.5. And so, yes, we're making some estimates about how that 6,089 translates into the number of approvals, because those are receipts, number of cases filed. And so we're going to assume a very high percentage of approvals. And then with that, we're also going to assume that there are a certain number of dependents. And so here, Lee has assumed that there would be about 2.5 dependents. Or let's just clarify that point. Do you mean 2.5 applicants in the entire family or 2.5 additional applicants in addition to the investor?
Total applicants. So 1.5.
So 1.5 dependents.
Correct.
And so based on that, Lee is projecting, and this is why he's saying this is a guess, that the total demand represented by the 6,089 cases filed, which translates into a demand for visas of over 14,000 in rural.
I think maybe what one may consider here also is the time taken to approval, right? We're all seeing rural approvals come in anywhere, let's say between 4 to 8 months, or maybe at the maximum, maybe 12 months. But we are seeing high unemployment take close to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we think about that, we also look into the separate countries, right? We look at China, which is mainly more towards consular processing versus adjustment of status. We look at India, which is more towards adjustment of status, hence a higher demand for rural in EB-5. And also what we look at, again, speaking for India or pertaining to India really is, we see really maybe 0 to 1 dependence on each application, because ideally the crowd is either you're a student or you're on an H-1B, or you're a married H-1B and H-4 or two H-1Bs that are married together. If they have children, they're anyways on a US passport. So it's really 0 to 1 dependence on each application. So maybe that may rejig your numbers a bit, Lee. I don't, and maybe that can have a bigger impact on the numbers that come under the remaining visa demand.
Oh, yeah, I think Jay, you make excellent point about dependence right now. We don't have hard data on this, but
Yeah,
I mean
it's
based
an
on
assumption. Yeah.
all the conversations that I have with IIUSA members, they're saying like the investors now it's not like 2.5 visas per investor because most of the investors right now are in the US already. I mean,
Right.
they may only need one for their spouse, and if they have any kids, they were born in the US, hence no visa number required. So I think the 2.5 is a very conservative estimate here. And I wish we have more data from USCIS about adjustment of status and how many dependents they are from those applicants. We don't. But yeah, this is something that we continue to monitor.
Yep, these are good points. All
And
right.
yeah, and before we move on, I just want to emphasize here, these are very conservative estimates. And again, we don't know any numbers about the AOS usage in 2025, which could be a lot. I mean, if they use like 1,000, 2,000 visa numbers, because we're seeing USCIS approving a lot of petitions right now, especially in Q3, those any of the AOS number used in 2025 will be taken out from this 14,000 demand here. So, I mean, in reality, this should not be as high as these numbers here.
Right.
Yep.
And yeah, and Christine can tell you more about the advocacy efforts that IIUSA has been doing about derivative as well. I mean, we have been advocating to only count investor and do not count investors' dependents in the visa count. So if that is successful, this would just cut by two-thirds.
It'd be 12,000 combined. That's
Right.
it.
That's it.
And it's a hard argument, but it's a strong argument given how few visas are allocated to EB-5 in general among all other visa categories. But it's if that provision were ever to take place, it would benefit pre-RIA investors. It would benefit post-RIA investors. So it's not something where it's just only for a certain subsection of the EB-5 population, and it would really just allow EB-5 to continue to benefit, economically, the regions where it's been. So,
and I just want to say, because I'm a technocrat, yes, it would be fantastic, and it certainly, like, we need it and we can use it, and the program has justified itself. But it's the congressional record of the whole rationale and how EB-5 was enacted in the first place that I think really justifies that interpretation of EB-5, 203B5, is the drafters really thought that they were creating a new visa program that would allow the immigration of 10,000 investors. So it's really unique in the whole preference system construction, because EB-5 is a latecomer. We had EB-1, 2, 3, and maybe 4 as well. Yeah, we must have. So when in the late 80s, EB-5 was created, there was discussion on the record about the rationale, a very interesting dialogue among the senators at the time. And there's clear record that the drafters' congressional intent was to allow 10,000 investors.
Which makes perfect sense. It's tied to the amount of investment they wanted to come into the country.
Exactly. Number one. And number two, it is, there's a lot of discussion about executive action in immigration in the last couple of years. This is something, this interpretation can be affected by executive action because this is interpretive. The State Department has interpreted how it counts visa demand. Yep. And so given the congressional record, the way that the State Department counts visa allocation, visa demand can be changed without congressional action.
Absolutely.
Just the
Yep.
thought.
I have a
Absolutely.
question on that thought, actually. How retrospective would they make that if it were to happen?
Well, I mean, you know, so, I mean, I think logically there's just like a limit because we have the unreserved, we have the 35,000 or the 40,000 in the unreserved backlog. So we could certainly apply that interpretation retroactively to lift those investors.
Right.
And I think that would be justified. And then that's as far back as we need to go because
Right.
everybody
Right.
else is cleared out.
Right.
It would make sense that it applies to any, allocation of visas that year. So anyone who has a pending petition
Pending.
would be eligible. I mean, everybody else has a visa already.
Yeah.
So I think the other interesting point, for Carolyn, for the argument you're highlighting is the fact that even with some of the litigation in the past, trying to force the court to make an interpretation, they've just deferred to USCIS. So I don't think there would necessarily be, even if there were an executive order to take place, telling state how to interpret visa usage for EB-5, it wouldn't be challenged, by the court either.
That's a good point because
That's a
the
good
court
point.
kicked it to the agency and deferred to the agency to
And
make that call.
the agency is about enforcement. So, it totally makes sense that, the executive arm needs to tell them what the policy is. So,
Yes, yes. All right.
All right.
We would welcome
move on?
executive action here. Just
Yeah, I mean, it's
saying.
really enlightening that I thought it will have to be a congressional action, but seems like we can get it done through regulations about getting rid of derivatives. So very excited if that happens. But moving on,
Yeah.
Jay mentioned about this processing time. So unfortunately, USCIS does not publish any data on processing time. I mean, they do publish a few data, but I don't think that is very reliable. So unfortunately, IIUSA have a lot of members, like you all sitting here, and you all have a lot of investors. So we have this initiative to encourage our members to share their data with us, so we can track processing times for 526 and 526E petitions. This is what we have so far. Thanks to a lot of regional centers, including CanAm, to share your data with us, so we can check. We have these numbers here. For the first time, we can show the difference in processing time between rural and high unemployment. So right now, what we're seeing for rural on average is 8 months. You will receive approval. 80% of the investors under the rural category will receive the approval between 6 to 11 months. So this is what we call a normal range. For high unemployment, right now we're looking at for those who have received approval. Again, for those who have been approved by USCIS, those lucky investors, on average, it takes them 11 months to receive this approval, and 8 to 16 months is the normal range. However, if you look at the bullet points here, 91% of the case in our data set under the high unemployment category, they are still pending. That means a lot of investors under HUA, they're still waiting for approval. And those investors, because their case are still pending, they're not included in this processing time calculation.
Right. I mean, it's going to be longer because they're pending.
And we look into this, the majority of these investors, over 50%, they have been pending over 16 months already. So that means like as soon as those investors get approved, is the processing time for high unemployment, at least here, will be up. So 11 months will not be sustainable. It's not a reliable expectation. However, for rural areas, we are seeing the majority of the investors right now, they are approved. They are approved by USCIS, and also the process time is going down, the trend that we are seeing right now. So it's kind of a different story between these two categories.
All right. Well, again, this also highlights the RIA revolution, right? I mean, it's about rural gets by statute prioritized processing. And in fact, that's what the agency is doing. It's prioritizing rural.
Yep. And if I may here, I'm shameless because we need more data. So right now we have 20 regional centers share the data with us. Our data set accounts for 60% of the total file length, total I-526 case file. However, it's always necessary to increase our data sample. So for all the regional centers here, if you're listening to this webinar, we would love if you can share your data with us so we can expand our data sample. So our conclusion or our observations will be more representative.
Lee, be sure to give us the contact details for how regional centers can get in touch with you, and we'll post that.
Yep, that would be great. Yep, it's just my first name, LE, last name, LI, at IIUSA.org. Definitely will share that with you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now we can move on.
Let's do it.
The last, second to the last slide I have is just a table to summarize all the important movement for the visa bulletin since last year in January. So as you can see, there are a lot of changes here. So I still remember similar this time last year, we saw the January visa bulletin. There was a note in the note section that says upcoming cutoff date could be necessary for the set aside categories. I'm sure we all had a very good Christmas and New Year worried about the potential cutoff date. But since then, there was no running, no further running. The set aside category has been staying current in the last 12 months. The January visa bulletin just published last week. The set aside categories are still current. There's no warning about any upcoming cutoff date. So I would assume at least February will still be current. That's my assumption. But if you can look at unreserved China and unreserved India here, there are a lot of movements under these two categories, especially for India right now. I mean, looks like the final action date for unreserved India is already May 1st, 2022. So it seems like the pre-RA backlog could be cleared out very soon for Indian investors. And we are seeing a lot of encouraging movement for Chinese PRA applicants as well. Right now it's August 15, 2016. If you are a fan of Susan Asiki and also me about our data talks, who is it?
Yeah.
We always talk about this backlog, and we all see that there's a big chunk of investors filed their 526 petitions before RIA in 2015 and 2016. So if those investors in 2016 all received their visas, that means the big chunk of the PRA Chinese backlog has been cleared out. And right now it's already August 15, 2016. So I think like for PRA China, we are looking at a lot of positive movement here. So these are my highlights. Here's
which would be so favorable. Jay, we would love, I mean, you know, the whole, when we talk EB-5, the conversation often seems dominated by the China perspective because it's the industry, our market, and you know, everything has been. From the Indian market and investor perspective, what are you seeing? What does this say to you, especially the advancements in unreserved India?
Well, I'm gonna take a leap here and say that a backlog for India seems a little far down the road now that we see the unreserved category open up to post RIA, which is May 2022. Especially given that if rural or high unemployment in India do backlog, then we can tap into the unreserved category for those that have applied prior to May 1st, 2022. And then, of course, we do expect these dates to also move forward more rapidly as the months come along. So I think the thought of having long backlogs for India, for me, may have just kind of subsided a little bit. I may be a little more optimistic than others in this, but I think until Lee doesn't share some more numbers with us in the future, we won't know. But Yeah, I think it's looking, to be honest, I think it's looking good for India. I don't know if you all agree, but I think it's looking good for India, especially given this bulletin for January that May 1st, 2022 is the cutoff date for the unreserved category.
I mean, I don't know how you guys feel. I just feel so whipsawed this time in a favorable direction, right? Because because my assumption has been, and Jay's heard me say this, my assumption had been unreserved. Okay, so the wait is around 5 years for us to clear the unreserved pre-RIA backlog. And now it seems like, as Jay's saying, there is none.
Yeah.
So if this holds, this is tremendously favorable. Would everybody agree?
Absolutely. I think, our internal conversations, I think, we had always been looking at India maybe clearing around 2027. So obviously it's happening a bit earlier than we thought. I'd be, we all speculate on why. Um, and that China would be clearing around 2030. I think, last time I talked to Suzanne, she was talking about maybe 2032 or so. So, we've all been looking forward, and whether I've had discussions with her about whether or not that will improve wait times for our post-RA, retrogression that's inevitably going to happen. Yes, the answer is we still need derivatives to be eliminated. But I think that for India, what that means for the market is that even if concurrent filing no longer becomes an option sometime later this year, right? Because we've all been waiting, not this fiscal year. Sometime say mid 2026, we see something happening. The truth is, for so many of our Indian investors, waiting a couple of years is something that is plannable, that is manageable. You're talking about college students who are going in year one, as long as they get something filed and it's ready, a visa is ready by the time they finish their graduation or their OPT, they're still on course. So it is still manageable. And we saw this even with in the earliest, in 2017, when retrogression is less than 5 years, less than 7 years, people can still plan around it. EB-5 is still a very viable option for our investors. So.
And I mean, if this holds, this could really bring HUA back in the game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I can report right now that investors are, like a 5 to 7 year wait, to your point, Christine, they can plan with that, especially when the alternative in the EB1 and EB2 is, what, a century in EB2 and EB3, or something ridiculously close to that. So yeah.
Yeah, especially I think that right now under concurrent filing, even like if the window is closed later this fiscal year, as long as you file before the window is closed, that you can just renew your EAD and
Right.
travel permit and just wait for your visa. I mean, basically you enjoy all the green card benefits while you're waiting for your retrogression.
And for US based H-1Bs who have faced such a volatility in the labor market with their current high-tech employers, having that concurrently filed EAD is huge.
Absolutely.
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 Although I may want to play a little bit devil advocate here. Last year, I want to highlight April and May 2025. We saw big retrogressions in both unreserved China and reserved India.
Word.
So my unlawyer legal advice is for those investors who are qualified right now, go and get your visa numbers because you don't know when those dates could move back in future months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
make sure you act fast.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
Wow. Well, this was so good. This was jam-packed with awesome information and great conversation. Where to? I mean, I don't like to do it too much of future prognostication in the look back edition, but I mean, this has got to leave us with some thoughts on advocacy in the next 2 years. Christine, lead the way.
I think that we know final action dates are going to get out sometime next year. I think that after the very early warning, the visa bulletin's been a little bit, more cautious and just waiting a little bit longer. But I think with the queues of filed petitions, it's inevitable that we get final action dates sometime next year. If it's mid next year, we'll deal with that, and there will be a crazy rush until then. I think we're all used to that. That has been the case for the past, year anyway. I think that everyone's eye is on moving the grandfathering deadline from September 30th, 26 to align with the program sunset in September 2027. I think that there's obviously the EB-5 program has historically always been approved as part of the continuing resolution. That budget is up to be extended in February. There's a chance that there's so much support, and I think with the economy in the US being what it is and some expected volatility down the road, especially for credit in the markets, EB-5 has always played a role in getting projects in tight credit markets to keep them going, keep local economies going. So I think that there is an awareness that EB-5 can play that role moving forward, and therefore it's really important to try to get that grandfathering deadline move forward. I think that, even if it's not a technical amendment, it's a fairly easy ask as part of the budget bill. So whether it happens in February or it happens on September 30th, exactly, and we wait to the last minute on the edge of our seats, I think that in general, the feedback we're getting on the Hill is that there's a good chance with the right support and the right, sponsorship, that there's no hard reason why it shouldn't. So that would be a welcome relief, I think, because there will be a map rush to the grandfathering. It's a feature that is a welcome addition to the RIA, but was never there before. So I think, otherwise we're going to have a long year of not a lot of anything. And then after that, I think advocacy falls in the same thing. It's grandfathering, and then it's program reauthorization, and then it's really the derivatives. I think that there's a big push for permanent reauthorization of the program. Carolyn, you've been a huge advocate of this for years, and you're just like, come on, people. But, honestly, even if we get another 5 years, if you get 10 years, it would be hugely beneficial, providing a sense of stability for the program after so many of these short-term reauthorizations. To even have another 5-year or 7-year would be a huge gift. And then it gives us more time to work on permanent reauthorization. Just kind of depends on where we are, when the program sunsets politically and everything else going on. But I think there is on the Hill a more general understanding and appreciation of what EB-5 has done, especially in recent years, and honestly what role it can play in the economy in the upcoming few years. I mean, we are seeing its interest rates have not come down. Private equity is having a hard time getting debt refinanced. It's a difficult time to get projects off the ground. So EB-5 has always been an important part of these economic swings, and it can continue to be so. And then, we will keep derivatives, honestly, and I've said this over and over, it's an existential crisis for the program. It always has been. If we can get rid of derivatives, the amount of EB-5 dollars that can be raised on an annual basis will stop going on this roller coaster that we've been on. It can become predictable. The government can really talk about where they want to see EB-5 dollars being spent in terms of different industry sectors. Affordable housing is something that's been recommended as a target for EB-5. But once there's more predictability in terms of how many visas can be raised, it never has to return to 2017 levels, 2016 levels. Those were crazy times. As you saw in Lee's chart, I don't really want to be back in those times. Okay.
It was a blur.
It was a blur. And there was a lot of bad projects out there. We don't need that kind of EB-5 program. What you really need is like with the requirement that the project be approved before the investors get approved. For investors, there's a lot more transparency, and adjudications are faster, so they know what's going on, not waiting 5 years, 6 years before knowing that they don't have the option for an EB-5. This is a program that can really have huge impact and continue to be part of the US economy. So I think that, like I said, next year, there's a lot of milestones next year for us to get the word out, get people on board. And, certainly, you and I have talked about what that kind of narrative looks like. At CanAm, we're already thinking about what our next white paper can be, and we want to continue on this theme of advocacy and really talk about case studies that have had impact in economic cycles. We feel like another one's coming. Let's talk about how EB-5 has really kept economies going in the past. And so,
Oh my gosh,
happened in the
yes. I mean, we've been there.
yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Christine, thank you. Thank you for your leadership, your advocacy, your insight and foresight. This is an incredible paper, and we will turn to it again and again.
Thank you. Hopefully we can lure you into contributing into our next one.
Oh, yes, yes. Just, you know, take me off the line, which I can't quite yet. And Lee, thank you so much. Thank you for your calculus and your fast typing and your fast analysis. You've contributed so much to transparency in the industry with your numbers and with the data that you share. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you for this opportunity and also this platform as well. Without these platforms, there's no way we can share the data. So I appreciate these platforms, and we can use these platforms and reach out to more audience for our analysis. So thank you for the invitation.
You're very welcome, and you just got yourself another invitation at some point in the very near future. Jay, I want you to sew us up and put a bow on our year-end look back. What are your closing thoughts?
I think this year, speaking for everyone, I think has been incredible. I think in terms of the number of applicants all over the place from all countries, I think has really shot up. We've seen a lot of action from rest of the world, which is very unlike the previous years, which means that EB-5 is really spreading the word all around. I think it's been with the RIA, there's a lot more security, there's a lot more integrity in the program. I think concurrent filing has been a great boon to all the students out there, all the H-1B guys out there, all the L1s out there that have been backlogged since a few years. So I think overall, it's really been a great program to be a part of. It's been a great program to talk to families about and help ease their anxiousness about all the geopolitical situations that are going on all across the world. I think it's really been a savior this year for a lot of students and a lot of H-1B applicants that are in the US. So I would really highly request IIUSA, CanAm, and of course you, Carolyn, to keep doing what you're doing on the advocacy levels and make EB-5 a permanent program so that it helps not only us but of course everyone out there that needs a more permanent solution in the US.
Make EB-5 great, greater.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that was perfect. That was perfect, you guys. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be a friend to you all, and I'm so grateful. So grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Happy holidays.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays,
Happy holidays.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.